After Joe Biden's debate with Donald Trump on June 27th, it seemed Donald Trump was almost guaranteed to win the presidential election of 2024. But following Joe Biden dropping out and Kamala Harris taking his place, she has completely surged in the national polls, swing state polls, favorability polls, betting markets, and forecasts. She has gained tons of traction with minorities and young people, while Donald Trump has been seemingly abandoning the usual GOP issues of border security and inflation and moving to more odd issues, like him being more attractive than her and trying to say he's better on reproductive rights. But a few days ago, during the DNC, it came out that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was going to drop out and endorse Donald Trump, and RFK has been polling at around 5%. So will it be enough to hand Trump the lead again? Find out as I cover my updated Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump election prediction. So we're going to go state by state, and I'm going to cover how I think they will vote. So I'm going to start off with the safe states for Kamala Harris. So these are states that I think will go to her by more than 15%. Usual suspects: Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Colorado, which has been shifting to the left extremely fast, DC, Maryland, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, New York, Maine's 1st District, and Illinois. That puts her at 191 electoral votes. I don't see any of these going to Trump under any circumstances. Now for Donald Trump, states of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska's 3rd District, Nebraska at large, Oklahoma, Missouri, which could be a bit under 15, but we'll just have to see, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana. That puts him at 102 electoral votes. Again, none of these states can go to Kamala Harris, I do not think. Now for the states that I think will go to either candidate by between 5 and 15%, starting with the states that I think will be just a little bit under 15% or around like 10%. For Kamala Harris, those are the states of Virginia and New Mexico. They have been shifting to the left extremely fast. You're going to hear me say that a lot. I'm going to start sounding like a broken record. But they have been shifting to the left quite fast. And there's been some talk about Virginia becoming closer. I just do not buy it. I think the polls there are flawed. Joe Biden won the state by 10% in 2020, and I think it will be quite similar to that. So around like D+7 to D+9 territory. Next, we have Nebraska 2nd. It's around the Omaha suburbs and Omaha itself, and it is very suburban. It is very moderate, and it relies a lot on independent voters, and Donald Trump has been doing quite bad with them. So I think she carries it by around 7 to 9%, kind of similar to how Joe Biden did in 2020. Next, New Hampshire and Maine at large. These are two very similar states. They have a lot of independents. RFK Jr. was going to do kind of well there, or at least better than the rest of the nation. And they have been shifting to the left, and I feel like Harris can appeal a lot in there. And they just really hate Donald Trump. So I think they are both like D+6 to D+8. And the final state that I think will go to Kamala Harris by more than 5% is the home state of her vice president, Tim Walz. It is Minnesota. It went to Joe Biden by around 6% there, but there are a couple factors that make me think that it will go to her by an even bigger margin. First of all, it is a very progressive state. It has a lot of white working class voters. And while Joe Biden had some appeal there, Tim Walz can absolutely carry the state home, and her and Tim Walz can energize progressives there. So that is huge. Also, you have the the complete wash of a Senate race there, where Amy Klobuchar is just going to destroy her opponents by around like 10 to 15%, and I think that will affect up ballot races like Minnesota just a little bit for it to get to around 7 to 8% for Kamala Harris. Now for the states that I think will go to Donald Trump by between 15 and 5%. The states of Kansas, Montana, and Nebraska's 1st. They're all quite similar, especially Kansas and Nebraska's 1st. They are very suburban. They're quite moderate. And I think they will go to Donald Trump by just under 15%, and they're shifting to the left, both quite fast. Now, Montana is a slightly different story from those two. Montana, it voted for Donald Trump by around 16% in 2020, and I think it'll shift to the left by around 2%, mainly because of the Senate race there turning out Democrats who might not normally vote because it's Montana. Next, another group of two states is the states of Iowa and Ohio. They've been shifting to the right quite fast. They were swing states in 2008, 2012, but Donald Trump made a lot of inroads in 2016 there and won them both by 8%, and that stuck in 2020 in a more left-leaning year. And I think they will continue their trend rightward. Iowa, I think will go to Trump by around 11%, and Ohio, I think will be a bit less, around 9%. There's an extremely competitive Senate race there, and that might increase turnout for Democrats just a little bit to keep it under 10%. Next, we got Maine second. This is the part of Maine that is shifting to the right quite fast. It does have a Democratic representative, but he is basically built for that district, whereas Kamala Harris, if Joe Biden did bad there, she's not going to do very well there as well, because Joe Biden had a very specific appeal there in the Northeast, and I think she will lose the district by around 8%. There have been polls coming out there showing that she is up by 5. I just do not buy it. That is not going to happen. Next, for the South, there's 2 likely states for Trump, South Carolina and Florida. South Carolina is shifting to the left very slowly, and it voted for Trump by around 11%. I think it will be a very similar story this time. Probably it will vote for Trump by around 10%. And then there's a huge black community there, and I think Harris will make inroads there that Biden simply could not. Florida has been shifting to the right, one of the fastest rightward shifting states in the entire country, and I think it will go to Trump by around 6 to 7%. You saw Democrats almost lose Miami-Dade in their primaries recently. You saw Ron DeSantis win the state by 20. Marco Rubio won the state by 15 in 2022. It is not very competitive anymore. It is a Republican lock, and you can see that with Democrats removing a lot of their funding from there. And the final likely state I have for Republicans is the state of Alaska. It is shifting to the left very fast. It will re-elect its Democratic representative there, Mary Peltola, by around 10 points. However, Democrats just aren't putting enough into the state yet for it to be that competitive, mainly because it's only worth 3 electoral votes. So why would Democrats take the time to go spend money there or visit there when it takes you hours to get there, since it's on the lower 48 and it's only worth 3 electoral votes? I just don't really see it, but expect it to be quite competitive in future elections. So that is it for the likely states for either candidate. Kamala Harris is at 226, Donald Trump is at 179, and we are left with the 8 states that I think can kind of go to either candidate. However, there's one glaring outlier here, and that is the state of Texas. I do not really see this going to Kamala Harris under basically any circumstance, except for maybe if Trump goes to jail. But if he were to go to jail, then I would completely change my prediction. Texas, it is shifting to the left quite fast. Don't let people tell you otherwise. They're literally just coping for the Republican Party. It voted for Mitt Romney by 17 points in 2012. It voted for Donald Trump by around 9 points in 2016. It voted for Trump by around 5% in 2020. It is very clearly shifting to the left. People might cite the governor's race there in 2022. However, that was going against a weak candidate, and Greg Abbott is quite popular there. It's shifting to the left. I think it'll be barely under 5%. And Kamala Harris will make a lot of inroads with Latinos there that Joe Biden simply could not. We'll couple that with the suburbs of Houston and really all of the big cities, they're shifting left. Come on. And tons of people there are moving from the Rust Belt and California and turning it bluer. And the Republicans really need to put a lot of effort into the state, because if they lose it, basically all of their hopes for winning presidential elections are gone. Now we are left with the 7 true swing states, the 7 states that I think can actually really go to either candidate. And I think they're all fairly competitive. Kamala Harris is spending basically all of her time in just these 7 states. So that was the only Republican state that I think will go to them by between 5 and 1%. I think it'll be like R+4. Now for these states that I think will go to Democrats by between 5 and 1%. And I'm going to start off with the state of Michigan. It is the bluest of these 7 states. It voted for Joe Biden by around 2.9% in 2020. You can make the argument that Palestine is going to hurt them there, and it will by around 0.5%, but that's not going to be that big of an issue there. Kamala Harris is way more supportive on Palestine than Donald Trump, and that will come out once attack ads start rolling out. And I think that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to be able to turn out a lot of the progressives there, and she will unlock a lot of black turnout. in places like Detroit. So I think it'll be around D+2. Next, the state of Nevada. Now, Donald Trump is actually ahead in a lot of the polls here, but that can be pretty easily explained by, well, Republicans are normally overestimated in the state of Nevada. You can see that in 2022, 2020, 2018, 2016, blah, 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 blah. They are overestimated. And I think Donald Trump will be overestimated here as well. I think it's around D plus 1.5 maybe, mainly because like it has a history of voting Democrat, and I think it will continue that. 2022 was a very unusual circumstance, and even then, Catherine Cortez Masto was able to hold on to her Senate seat there. I do not really see it going red very, very much, and I think it will go to Harris by around like 1.5%. She will be able to turn out a lot of the Latinos there. She will be able to turn out a lot of the suburbanites there in places like suburban Las Vegas and in Reno. It is shifting to the right, but that will not be enough for this election. The next state that I think will go to Democrats by between 5 and 1% is the state right next to it, and that is the state of Arizona. It is an extremely, extremely, extremely moderate state, and it may not like a lot of Kamala Harris's agenda, which is not extreme. It's not very moderate, but it detests Donald Trump way more. He insulted John McCain. He like January 6th is just poison in the suburbs and everything that has to do with that. Same with Project 2025. Donald Trump is just poison in the suburbs, and that is going to hurt him in places with a lot of suburbs like Arizona, like Nevada. And I think he will lose here by around 1.5%. That is a big shift to the left from 2020, but it is shifting to the left. And I think it will go to Democrats by more than in 2020. There's also a big Senate race there that will also be basically a wash, and Democrats will take it. Not to mention that she is doing better with Latinos. And the final state that I think will go to Kamala Harris by between 5 and 1% is the state of Wisconsin. This is a shift to the left from 2020, which is kind of surprising because Wisconsin is a state that is shifting to the right. However, these are very special circumstances. First of all, Donald Trump is not really putting much effort into it. It seems he is going for the most basic plan for a Republican victory, which is Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, which would put him at exactly 270. And he is not really even putting much into the state of Wisconsin. And now, with Kamala Harris picking Tim Walz, who is from the sister state of Wisconsin, Minnesota, I think it will go to Democrats by around like maybe 1.3%. He is able to energize, both of them are able to energize a lot of the progressives there. He helps a lot in a lot of, Tim Walz helps a lot in the driftless areas of Wisconsin, a lot of the areas in like their 3rd congressional district, somewhere around here. And like I said, he draws out progressives. She is able to help a lot in the suburbs because, like I said, Donald Trump is poison there. And I think, yeah, it will shift to the left from 2020. Do not expect this to be a trend, though, and it will be shifting to the right in future elections. And that is it for the lean states for Kamala Harris. And she is literally 2 electoral votes away from a victory. That is crazy. Donald Trump is so clearly just going for the 3-state strategy, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And if he does that, that means he only has one path. And if one of those states doesn't go to him, then he's cooked. He's genuinely, literally cooked. And I think a lot of them will not go to him. So let's go over my predictions for the 3 states that I think will be under 1%. These 3 states. And I'm going to start off with Pennsylvania. And yes, I think it will go to Kamala Harris. That puts her at 287 electoral votes. I think she will be the 47th president. I think she will win it because it is very populous. Kamala Harris will be able to increase a lot of African-American turnout there, which should seriously help Democrats in places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. She can help in the suburbs there because, like I said, Donald Trump is poison to the suburbs. And Tim Walz can help in a lot of the like Rust Belt areas, like in Erie, places like that, which normally decide the election. It is shifting to the right, I would say, but come on, like Donald Trump is not going to do extremely well there. I think it will be a shift to the right from 2020, simply just because Donald Trump is putting way more resources in it now, but I just do not think it will be enough. I think this will go to Kamala Harris by barely under 1%. And if you look at the polls, she's actually behind there. That's mainly because I think what will hand her the state is not what handed Joe Biden the state in 2020. What handed Joe Biden the state was the suburbs. He was able to make a lot of inroads there. What will hand Kamala Harris the state is actually the black turnout in the state. She's able to turn them out like what Raphael Warnock did in 2022. And couple that with Donald Trump being poison to the suburbs, he's not going to make serious inroads there. I think she pulls it by barely under 1%. And she's underestimated in the polls there because they can't really track black turnout for her very well. She's doing worse in the polls in terms of like black turnout for her. But I just do not think that will be the case. I think it will be a bit of a shocker compared to the polls. And I think it will be like D plus 0.8, 0.9. And the final state, the closest state, is the state of North Carolina. I think this is extremely competitive, which is crazy because it went to Donald Trump by 1% in 2022. But it's like this state was made for Kamala Harris. It always seems like it's so close for Democrats, but they've never won a statewide office there aside from governor since 2008. However, this could seriously be the year that it changes. There's a lot of African Americans there, which Kamala Harris can make turn out. There's some suburbs there, which Donald Trump will be poisoned for. And yeah, I think it seriously could go to Kamala Harris. But as of right now, I just do not think she has the edge there. I think it will go to Donald Trump by a complete narrow margin. It is completely in play. I would not be shocked if Democrats were to win this. And yeah. Also, there's an extremely competitive governor's race there, which I think Democrats are heavily favored in. And because they have the Republicans are nominating a very bad candidate who's poisoned to the suburbs. And that could seriously help the Democrats statewide. I think Kamala Harris could seriously win here. She's doing like a big bus tour in Georgia, and that is going to help her there. And I think she could do something very similar just in the state next to it in North Carolina, and I think she could seriously pull it. And she could win 319 electoral votes. I just do not think she has the edge currently. It is a historically Republican state, and it went to Donald Trump by 1% in 2020. Unless she goes up in the polls even more in the state because they tend to overestimate Democrats, then yeah, I can't see her winning the state more than I can see Trump winning the state. However, I have been seeing more and more people saying North Carolina will be to the right or will be to the left of Georgia, which is not a crazy take at all. So this is my final map. Kamala Harris with 303 electoral votes, Donald Trump with 235. Let me know what you guys think. In terms of the popular vote, I think she wins it. She wins basically the same amount that Joe Biden did, but I think she will win it by a slightly smaller margin. I think she'll win 51%, something like that. Yes, I do not think RFK's effect is very big. I think a lot of his voters, seeing what he's been doing, first of all, he wasn't going to win 5%. He was not going to win 5%, contrary to what the polls say. A lot of people say they're going to vote third party in polls, but they end up not when it actually comes closer to election day. And I think a lot of his supporters will be very similar. He's just been a horrible candidate. He admits to dumping a bear carcass in Central Park in New York. What the hell? Who the hell says that? Is he trying to not get any votes? Him endorsing Trump, it's not that big, okay? I'm honestly starting to think the effect is negligible, because a lot of his voters just don't like Trump or Harris. I think they're probably gonna stay home, if anything, It might boost Trump by 0.5, 0.7%, but that is not enough to hand him the election. I am sorry. Yeah. At the very most, it maybe hands him Georgia, but that's another thing. Kennedy is so incompetent. He forgot to get off the ballots. He only got off the ballots in Arizona and Pennsylvania. So he's still going to be on the ballot in Georgia, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Nevada, in North Carolina. And yeah, he is cooked. He completely screwed the pooch there, because he missed the deadline. So contrary to what he says, he will still be on the ballot in those states. He's literally only off the ballot in 2 states. So yeah. And in those states where he is not off the ballot, he's only going to help Harris. So yeah. Also, honeymoon. There is no honeymoon. I'm sorry. I used to be a big believer in the honeymoon, but it's just not happening. Okay. Turns out that rise in the polls, that rise in favorability was just from people seeing that there's a different candidate out there. There's an alternative to Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And I've been saying this for weeks. I've been saying that Americans have been dying for anyone that isn't Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And they finally got it, and they have ran with it. And I think Kamala Harris will win the 2024 presidential election. Thank you guys. I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for 900 subscribers. The day we hit 1,000 is the day I post my mega election night. Thank you. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.